What's up YouTube, Jeff back again today, another exciting Samsung video for you guys. And today, yes, sometimes we have to take a look at the competition, and even though we're a Samsung site, today I'm running iOS 26 developer beta on my iPhone 16 Pro Max to compare it to One UI 8 beta number 1 on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I'm going to show the different design of the two devices. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the features that are similar, some of the things that Apple borrowed from Android and Samsung, compare some of them, where Apple is doing well, where they're kind of coming up short, etc. Remind you guys, if you haven't checked out the channel before, make sure you also check out our website. If you're a Samsung fan, you like Android, SamyGuru.com, latest Samsung news, tips, tricks, tutorials, and reviews. You can also get our mystery box program. If you order a new Samsung device, you get a free case, cleaning kit, desktop phone stand, screen protector, and other great accessories. Tap on the phone you're interested in to sign up. It is US only. Put in your phone number, email, or both, and you'll get the link to order on launch day. We cover shipping and all that stuff. You pay nothing. We use our affiliate revenue to fund it. It's a good way to give back to our readers. So check that out if you're interested. So Apple did their largest redesign in the history, well, I should say since iOS 7 for the iOS this year. And iOS 26 is the new name. So we're not going from iOS 18 to 19, it's iOS 26. They made this kind of shift so that all the version numbers are same, macOS, iPadOS, watchOS, all of that, corresponding with the year, because of course 2026 is coming up. And that'll basically be the majority of that year. It'll be the newest operating system. I guess that's the thought process. Anyway, they come up with this brand new liquid glass design that's supposed to basically change with the way the light shifts. You can kind of see it's kind of hard under the studio lights maybe, but you can kind of see if you move it around, it changes a little bit. It's a little bit easier to see with the clear icons, which look more like glass, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But these icons, even, you can kind of see the glass effect on them close up. Now, I want to show you guys a tour of kind of everything. So this is the home screen. I'll show you some different looks with the different icons. This is a pretty standard One UI 8 home screen, very similar to One UI 7. If we go into the quick panel, you guys can see here, one of the concerns I have about iOS 26 is the readability. You can see here, there's a lot going on, a lot of distractions, depending on the wallpaper you have as well. Some of these things are not as readable as you might like. You still have the option to, go up here to the plus sign. You can add controls and customize them like you could before. I still think Apple kind of did a good job with that. There's some things that Samsung could learn from that. But of course, on One UI 8, you can also edit your controls here. I mean, the overall look, I think One UI 8 is a lot more readable, even though I do like the liquid glass idea in general. You guys can let me know what you think. I think there's a lot going on here. Now, that just kind of continues if you go into the notification shade. Let me go on both here. If we go into the notification shade and we look at some notifications, you're going to notice here, there's some readability issues depending on the wallpaper you have. Now, they try to minimize this and they say it adapts to different wallpapers. And I've noticed it does an okay job, but depending on your vision and your preferences, you might not necessarily like the readability that you get from swiping down and getting into your notification center. It's not a massive concern for me. It hasn't bothered me a lot yet, but it might be a concern for some people and something that you don't necessarily love. Now you guys see that new animation there. Very cool. Apple has done some really cool things with the animations. Let's go to the lock screen really quick so we can take a look at the lock screen on these two devices. The lock screen is always a fun thing to take a look at. Samsung has done some great things. Apple has this new feature where you can stretch the clock. You have to unlock your phone to edit, which is standard. Unfortunately, you don't have a fingerprint sensor on there, which is annoying. Over here, that's one thing I still hate about Apple is no fingerprint sensor. So you have this option to stretch the clock. Of course, on One UI 7, you can also make a very large clock. It's not quite as stretched. It's not the exact same pattern as it is over here, but you can still do something very similar. If you go into customization options here, they still have some cool things like the spatial scenes, depth effects, and of course, you can see here, the extend wallpaper option there with the depth effect. You'll see all of that cool stuff right there. It'll let you do that. Those are some things that Samsung could probably, you can still do variations of that. But that'd be a nice thing to see Samsung kind of add to the lock screen editor. But personally, I still like the widgets better on Galaxy devices. Apple's done a nice job with widgets, but I still just like the options, the way they look a little bit better. I like the layout of the lock screen a little bit better. Of course, again, I am a Samsung guy, so that's expected. I do think it's kind of nice that here you get some previews of some popular ones at the very top. Here you just get this long list. So that's something as well that maybe Samsung could improve. You've got these two shortcuts there, which are very similar. Pinch to crop over here. Of course, you can also edit that here as well. I mean, Samsung does have a lot more clock styles if you actually look at the styles. Also, this stretch thing can only be done with the main clock style. Samsung's got a lot more, and if you install clock face, you can actually get even more styles than what you can get with Apple. Now, you do have glass versus solid, and admittedly, the glass look does look interesting. I've been trying it since that's, kind of their entire new thing. You can also play around with, moving around the date and the clock here. There's a couple of options there. Over here, you've also got widgets that you can move to you can get rid of the date and put something different up there if you're interested. So the widgets now move down here if you stretch the clock on iOS 26. So overall, I mean, I do think the lock screen looks decent on iOS 26, but I still like the clean look of One UI 8 a little bit better. I also really do love having the Now bar down here, and I've never been a big fan of Apple's notifications, and I don't think I ever will be until they decide to change that. You see here the glass effect on the passcode screen. It does have elements that look really, really nice. Now, if we talk a little bit about the home screen customization options, Apple's added a few things this year to the customization. You now have default dark. I'll go over here as well and go to settings. And here inside settings, of course, you can change your app size, which is something you can do here as well on iOS. And then you also have the ability to basically change your icons as well. If you go into wallpaper and style and go into color palette, this is where you'd be able to apply the palette to app icons, something I don't really like to do. But Apple gives you the ability to have default dark icons, clear, which is this glass effect. You can do that with light, dark, or tinted. The auto will adapt it to the wallpaper. And then you can also do the tinted one, which will allow you to change it based on the color. I have found this to be a little buggy. The clear ones are very interesting. I'll leave those there for a minute so you guys can see how they look. But of course, keep in mind that one thing that's really easy to do on Android, and specifically on Samsung phones, if you use Theme Park, is you can install any icon pack from the Play Store that you want. You can even get icons that look like this or anything else that you want. Now, since I'm on the beta, I don't have any icon packs installed now, but I have a lot of icons I like to use, like Vera, Aries, a lot of other ones from 1.4 Studio. You can get any icons you want. And I actually think the One UI 8 stock icons look really good. But Apple's definitely trying something new here. They're trying to give more customization and give people a new look, because again, they haven't done anything new for a while. Just like Samsung tried with One UI 7, something completely new. That's what they're doing as well. So this is the true like glass look. You guys can see if you move it in the light, the icons shift a little bit based on kind of the available light and the viewing angle, and they've done a pretty good job with that. Overall, I think it looks pretty nice. But One UI 8, I'm still very happy with the design. And again, I can change my icon pack to whatever I want. So it's not something that I feel like, is going to make a huge difference, make me want to switch to iOS. Let me show you guys a couple of cool things that I did notice. If you go into music, they have these throughout the UI. I won't spend time on all of them, but they have some really cool, and I showed you guys the other animation earlier that was added. Like down here, if you're browsing through something, look at this little glass, this little piece of glass moves between. Like as you tap your finger, that little bubble, that little glass bubble moves around, which is really, really cool. I think these kind of effects are something that do make Apple unique. Samsung has tried to add more animations and, bouncy. There's a lot more bounciness going on in iOS. That's something I think a lot of us would like to see. But again, Samsung did give you the option to tune a lot of your animations in Home Up with the new version of Home Up in One UI 7. So you can still play around with that anytime you want if you go into Good Lock. But little touches like this, like the moving glass bubble, those are things that Apple does really well. And even though you can edit it in Home Up, a lot of the animations, stock animations, these little touches are things that Samsung maybe should get used to adding more, which will give people a little more identity and personality for One UI 7, One UI 8, One UI 9, etc. as we go on. I think that people enjoy these type of things. Okay, so enough about the design. The design is interesting. I think a lot of people are going to either love or hate this design. There's obviously some readability things they could work on. But aside from the design, let's talk about some of the features that they added. And first of all, if you look at the settings menu, one thing I'll say here is look at the spacing in the settings menu. It seems like a lot of space compared to the old iOS settings. It looks a little weird at first glance. That's just one thing that I noticed. But they did add some features that are similar to Galaxy things. One of them is if you go into power mode, so we go into a power mode, you have an option now down here in power mode to enable adaptive power. Now, if you actually look at this, this is something that was undoubtedly inspired, even though it's a little different, is the light performance profile on Samsung devices. When your battery usage is higher than usual, iPhone can make small performance adjustments to extend your battery life, including slightly lowering display brightness or allowing some activities to take a little longer. So that's very similar to prioritizing battery life and cooling efficiency over processing speed. But this does it in an adaptive way, which suggests it's using AI to do it on the fly, whereas light performance profile mode does it all the time. But still, neither of these really apply to games, and so they're helping you get better battery life in the long run. So this is something that Apple added, which I think is a nice feature, and not directly copied from performance profile, the light performance profile, even though it is kind of inspired by that idea. Everyone's always borrowing stuff to try to get better. One thing that was more or less ripped off was Circle to Search from Google. If you long press on your Galaxy phone, you can highlight anywhere and you can circle something and you can search it using Google Search directly. And this one, it tells you very good summary using Google Gemini Search Labs, what's going on in the image. Now on the iPhone, what you have to do is you actually have to take a screenshot. Let's see if I can even do this. Here, if you take a screenshot, so by hitting power and volume up, which I did behind the camera there, you'll then be able to do this new highlight to search, which includes Ask ChatGPT as well as image search. So if you do highlight to search, it works basically the same. You don't have to tap on this. I forgot about that. You can highlight any part of it, and then you can swipe up for image search, which will tell you it's going to search for Google, kind of like here, and then it will show you some similar results. Now you can also tap on Ask ChatGPT, ask about details. It'll automatically send it and give you a description of what's going on, whatever you ask about on your screen. And then of course, image search just brings up that same piece before. One thing I do like is it does drop this little icon that shows you where you did a highlight to search. It's very similar. I mean, they changed the way the screenshot tool works. And obviously you could say this is also much inspired by AI Select, which basically is Samsung's version of kind of Circle to Search. But this is more to do with, things on the device. But of course, from here, you can do a lot of other things that allow you to set as a wallpaper, etc. And up here, you can also do those kind of things, share it in various ways. So I still think with AI Select and Circle to Search, Samsung is still a bit ahead. I think it's a little easier to use. You don't need to take a screenshot on here. You just hold that bottom bar. Immediately you're in Circle to Search. But it's certainly a step forward for Apple users, and the inclusion of ChatGPT, if that's what you use for your AI agent, might be something that's very appealing to a lot of people. Apple also added a version of Bixby text call. So of course, also Google had this first with call screening. So if you go into the phone application, let me go into, I am not a big fan of iOS settings at all. I'm just not a huge fan. If you go into the phone app and you take a look at the settings here, you'll see that they have this new option down here, screen incoming calls, which is basically the same as Bixby text call. Calls from unsaved numbers will be asked for more information before iPhone rings. Now, here's the thing. With text call and with call screen from Google, you can screen any call you want, not just unknown numbers. I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, from Apple's perspective, they would only want to screen things that are from unknown numbers, because why would you screen your contacts? Sometimes I like to mess with my wife and screen her calls. She doesn't really appreciate it. But this is something that right now you can only do from unknown numbers. You see, you've got these other options here as well. You'll be able to do this with messages as well, kind of screen messages coming up when iOS 26 releases in stable. You've also now got the ability for this to wait on hold for you and wait till the person picks up, and then it will notify you and you can pick up. So a lot of features that Samsung and Google have had for a while are now coming to iOS 26 when it comes to the phone app and messages as well. Apple is also doing something that Google has done for a long time with visited places. In Apple Maps, now you'll be able to see the places you visit. You can save how long it wants, select how long it wants you to save your visits. Google pretty much does it forever unless you opt out, but you'll be able to see all these aggregated in the Maps app. Another change to a core iOS app is with the Wallet app. With Wallet, you now have the ability to pay in installments, which is something that Samsung Wallet actually recently added. I made a full video on this. If we go to, let me go to my quick access card, I'll show you guys. You have the ability to pay installments right here with this Visa card that I set up. You can do installment payments in store. I've been doing this. You basically just tap, select installments. It'll set up a pay in 4 plan. directly through Samsung and their partner. And I guess Apple's doing this kind of the same way with Apple Pay using Wallet. Now, I haven't set this up and tried it yet, but I imagine that it probably works in a very similar way. And I will do a full comparison of these two features just to kind of compare them. Samsung is obviously trying to do this in partnership with Split. Apple already has a partnership with Apple Pay because of the Apple Card with Goldman Sachs. So they're trying to do this new pay in 4 installments built directly into the Wallet app as well. There's a brand new games app, Apple Games, which of course Samsung has had for a long time. You have the gaming hub where you can have all the games that you play on your device. You've got your library, Apple Arcade events and updates. Very similar, you can see all the games that you have installed in your library like I can here. Play together, some various things like this. Instant Play is something that Samsung has that's very interesting that is not yet on Apple. As far as I know, I could be wrong though. You know, again, I don't use Apple as much as, so if you correct me, but I don't think they have Instant Play where you can start playing it without having downloaded the entire game yet. It's a pretty cool feature. Game Booster is something that Samsung has that, as far as I know, also Apple doesn't have, that doesn't appear to be in this new games app. This just aggregates your games, has arcade and play together. Game Booster, you can actually customize your performance, motion smoothness, custom for individual games, set up your game controller and all that kind of stuff. Now you do have the ability over here to set up a game controller. You can do that inside the app. Once you actually start playing a game, it'll pop up and let you add a game controller. But all this stuff like save power during touch protection, auto touch protection, access the game panel, pop-up app, reordered tools. There's a bunch of other stuff coming as well. Respawn indicator, some other ones I showed in a recent update to Game Booster that is a version that hasn't even released. So Apple still seems a little far behind, but it's nice to see them have this dedicated games app here in iOS 26. The battery menu in iOS 26 gets a redesign. I think it actually does look a little bit better than the Samsung one. Of course, power mode, you still have adaptive power. You can see that there. We talked about that earlier. This looks pretty nice. It actually shows you last charge 100% of the time. It tells you some information about it. I think Samsung could add a couple of things here to make it look, I like this, the graph actually looks really nice here with the average right next to it and shows that as well. I think Samsung could clean it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but I do want to give Apple props for that. And then also the Photos app is something that they did a really nice redesign on here in iOS 26. Gallery still looks great on One UI 8, but I do give Apple props because their Photos app was a mess before. Anyway, my conclusion is if you're a Samsung diehard, iOS 26 isn't going to give you a reason to switch over to an iPhone anytime soon. One UI 8 still looks amazing, has more multitasking features. Apple decided once again to skip multitasking on their large phones altogether. They brought some nice multitasking to the iPad, but still nothing on the iPhone, like pop-up windows, which you guys have seen me using with Google Keep here, even split screen multitasking, proper multitasking, nothing like that on the iPhone. As I said before, Galaxy AI still way behind Apple Intelligence in pretty much every conceivable way. Apple did not mention anything about the new contextually aware Siri, so a lot of these features that are available over here in Galaxy AI don't even exist on the Apple devices just yet. I'm sure when Apple releases it, it's going to be quite good, but it might be too late because Samsung and Google have been doing so many great things with Gemini and Galaxy AI that it may be hard to catch up. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about iOS 26 versus One UI 8. The design, of course, being a Samsung guy, I'm still a big fan of One UI 8. I think Samsung did a great job. There's still a couple elements of blur here and there. Some of those cool effects like the moving glass effect that I showed you guys. You know, these little touches that Samsung can maybe add here or there, but those aren't things, you know, usability things or UI look things that are going to make me jump ship. Curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.